Good day everybody, I am April Joy Padillo and I'm the leader of Group 5. We are assigned to discuss the Chapter 7, which is entitled The Measure of Central Tendency and Dispersion Variability. And later, I will introduce my colleagues and their assigned topic, and I will also give a brief description of it. So this is the objective of Chapter 7, to explain the meaning and function of the measure of central tendency and measure of dispersion or variability. Second is to distinguish among the measures of central tendency and measures of variability or dispersion. The third is to explain the meaning of normal and skewed score distribution. Introduction. A measure of central tendency is a single value that attempts to describe a set of data like scores by identifying the central position within that set of data or scores. As such, a measure of central tendency, or sometimes called measure of central location, central tendency refers to the center of distribution of observation, where do scores tend to congregate. In a test of 100 items, where are most of scores? Do they tend to group around the mean score of 50 or 80? There are three measures of central tendency: the mean, the median, and the mode. Perhaps you are most familiar with the mean, often called the average, but there are two other measures of central tendency, namely the median and the mode. Is there such a thing as best measure of central tendency? If the measure of central tendency indicate their scores congregate, the measure of variability indicate how spread out a group of scores is, or how varied end scores are, how far are from the mean. Common measure of dispersion or variability or range, interquartile range, variance, and standard deviation. And now let's discuss the 7.1, the measure of central tendency. The mean, mode, and median are valid measures of central tendency, but under different conditions. One measure becomes more appropriate than the others. For example, if the scores are extremely high and extremely low, the median is a better measure of central tendency, since mean is affected by extremely high and extremely low scores. Let's proceed to the arithmetic or the mean. The mean or average or arithmetic mean is the most popular and most well-known measures of central tendency. The mean is equal to the sum of all the values in the dataset divided by the number of values in dataset. Calculating mean is very simple. You just add up all the values and divided by the number of observations in your dataset. For example, 10 students in a graduate school class got the following scores in a 100-item test: 70, 72, 75, 77, 70, 80, 84, 87, 90, 92. The mean scores of the group of 10 students is the sum of their scores divided by 10. The means, therefore, is 805 divided by 10 is equal to 80.5, the average score of the group. There are 6 scores below the average score, which is the mean of the group: 70, 72, 75, 77, 78, and 80. And there are 4 scores above the average score of the group, which is 84, 87, 90, and 92. So that's it. And And now I will introduce my colleagues in chronological order. So the first reporter will be Masayo Romar, and he will report the when not to use the mean, median, and mode. So the mean has one disadvantage. It is particularly susceptible to the influence of outliers. These are values that are unusual compared to the rest of the dataset by being especially small or large in numerical values. The second reporter will be Masaglang Jude, and he will discuss the 7.2 normal and skew distribution. It is a score distribution. Example has a normal distribution when most of the values are aggregated around the mean, and the number of values decrease as you move below or above the mean. The bar graph of frequencies of a normal distributed sample will look like a bell curve. The third reporter will be Nukum Romar, and he will discuss the 7.3, the outcome-based teaching, learning, and score distribution, and the 7.4 measure of dispersion or variability. The fourth reporter will Miss Facultad, and she will discuss the range, what is variability. So variability refers to how spread out a group of score is. So Miss Pakatang will continue that work. And the fifth reporter will be Miss Matunhay, and she will discuss the range and variance. So range is the most simple measure of variability, while the variance can also be defined in terms of how close the scores and the distribution or the middle of the distribution. The sixth reporter will be Miss Maniakat, and she will discuss the standard deviation, which is the step 1 to 4. The next is Miss Pakhatang, and she will discuss the sample standard deviation, the step 1 to 4. And the second to the last reporter will be Mr. Monter, and he will discuss the 7.6 more notes on standard deviation. And last but not the least is Mr. Palmos, and he will discuss the 7.5 comparing and the 7.7 interpretation of standard deviation. And now I will give the floor to Mr. Romar S. Masayaw to continue the discussion. I hope you've learned something. Thank you and God bless everyone.